Is your garden struggling in the summer heat? If so, you're not alone. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to keep your garden thriving and healthy even when temperatures are brutal. And the tips I'm going to share here are beginner friendly, they're easy, and you don't need a whole lot of equipment or to spend a whole lot of money to implement them. So let's dive into it. And the very first step to creating a heat resilient garden is to grow plants that actually like the heat. So some of our favorite varieties may begin to struggle as temperatures soar. I know this is really especially true for me in my area in Central Florida. Tomatoes aren't doing well in the middle of the heat. My peppers aren't doing well in the middle of the heat. But there are a lot of other varieties that do like the heat, and I want to talk about those. So in my own garden specifically, instead of growing bush green beans right now, they just can't take the heat, I'm growing cowpeas, and this is a really great substitute. You can grow cowpeas as a dried bean that you can save, but you can also grow them for the tender pods and use them similar to how you would green beans. Now, I will admit, cowpeas are not nearly as good for me personally as green beans are, but they're a nice substitute that likes to grow well in my Florida summer heat. Another really great substitution for me is loofah. So I really love zucchini. And during the heat of summer, I can't grow zucchini very well. I can grow them up until about July, middle of July, but then I have to switch to something that's a little bit more heat tolerant. And that would be loofah. My loofah is doing exceptionally well. And I can use a young loofah that's still tender in much the same way that I could a zucchini. And when it comes to leafy greens, I definitely cannot get your traditional lettuces or spinaches or even kale to grow in my Florida summers. But one that does do exceptionally well is Egyptian spinach. Egyptian spinach is a wonderful spinach substitute that you can use either cooked or raw in salads. And so I really love to grow it in the middle of the summer when none of my other leafy greens are gonna do very well. Tip number 2 to having a thriving summer garden that's resilient to the heat is water deeply, but not often. And this may almost sound counter, but if you've paid attention to any of my other videos, you know how much I talk about the importance of deep watering. And what this will do is it'll encourage the roots to go down deeper into the soil so that they're not at that surface level. It'll create much healthier plants, much more robust plants that are more drought and heat resistant. And tip number 3 for that heat resistant garden is mulch is a non-negotiable. You absolutely need mulch if you're gonna try to grow a garden in the middle of summer. And if you're gonna try to be crazy like me and grow a garden in the middle of a Florida summer, you definitely need mulch. I prefer a pine shaving mulch or even crushed up leaves would be a good free alternative to that. But really, any type of mulch you're gonna use, it's okay as long as you apply a thick layer in the middle of the summer. Just make sure that you are keeping the ground completely covered. You don't want any ground exposed because any ground that is exposed is going to dry out really quickly. And if it gets dry enough, the soil can actually become hydrophobic, which means that even when water does come pouring down from the sky or from you watering, the ground may not absorb the water, it may actually repel it. So to avoid all of that, we want to make sure that we have a very thick layer of mulch and then couple that with a very deep watering that you do once or twice a week, depending on how much rain you have in the forecast. Tip number 4 for helping your garden thrive in the middle of that summer heat is going to be provide shade where you can. So even heat-loving plants, even plants that like full sun, in the middle of summer, again, especially in my Florida summer, they can really get stressed out in all of that heat and with the high intensity of the UV rays. So if you can put up some shade cloth over your garden, this is a really great idea in July, August, maybe even September, for some places even June. You don't need a whole lot of shade for most of your plants, depending on what you're growing, but any level of shade, if you can plant something near a tree, or if you can use taller plants that cast shade on lower plants, this is going to go a long way in helping reduce or even prevent the heat stress that your plants go through from the high intensity of the UV rays of the sun. Tip number 5 is going to be all about timing. So you're going to want to plant your heat-loving crops in the time frame that they do well, which is the middle of the summer. And I would also suggest that you get your heat-loving crops started early enough so that they're well established, their root systems are well established before the intensity of the summer heat sets in. When it comes to harvesting, timing is also important because we don't want our plants stressed out. Most plants, except for maybe tomatoes, you're gonna wanna harvest them early in the morning when temperatures are a little bit cooler. And this will help the plant recover a little bit from that shock of harvesting before the midday temperatures set in. And if you find that you have plants that are just not thriving in your summer heat, it's okay to just pull those out. Get them out of the garden, use that space for something else. Don't fight with plants that are struggling to just try to get them through that summer heat. There's just no need for that. It's easy to replant, seeds are pretty cheap, and also garden space is valuable. So don't waste valuable garden space trying to baby a plant that's not doing well in your summer heat. Just go ahead and pull it out, put something else in its place that's gonna thrive in that heat. And tip number 6 is one of my favorites, although it's often overlooked, and that is feed and care for your soil. So just like your plants can get really stressed out in the heat, so can your soil. And it's really important that we take good care of our soil, because if we support our soil well, it's going to support our plants well. So in the middle of the summer, or as temperatures start to increase a little bit, I like to do some top dressing and just add another layer of either compost or do a little bit of organic granular fertilizer or some type of organic matter that just is rich and nutrient dense that will feed my soil and keep my soil as healthy. Like I said, I want to keep my soil as healthy as possible. So I combine this mid-season top dressing or addition of compost or fertilizer with keeping the soil covered with a heavy-duty mulch layer. And I've got a recipe for healthy soil that's going to help create healthy plants. So before we wrap up today, let's go over a couple of common questions I get when it comes to how to care for our garden in the middle of the heat. One of the most common ones is, should I water my plants every day in a heat wave? Like, okay, Tasha, I know you said deep watering is important, but what about when temperatures are really high and my plants look really stressed? Like, should I go out every single day and water them? And the answer to this is not usually. So it can be really tempting, right, to go out and just add a bunch of water to your plants because they look stressed out. But again, if we are mulching the soil really well and we are implementing deep watering principles, this is probably not necessary. It can be a good idea to add a little extra water if you notice that your plants are struggling. Now that's true. Let's say that you go out in the middle of the day and your plants look really droopy. Well, that's probably just because it's hot. But let's say you go outside in the evening and they still look droopy. It might be a good idea then to go ahead and add some water. Or if you check your soil and you notice that there doesn't feel to be any moisture in the soil when you put your finger in the soil, then it might be a really good idea to go ahead and add some moisture, even if you've watered recently. But we don't want to overdo this, and we want to make sure that our soil actually needs it. Again, that fingertip method of checking the soil moisture level is going to be really important. I've talked about this in other videos, but the basic premise is stick your finger in the soil. If it feels wet, about a knuckle or two down, you're doing okay. If it feels dry and crumbly, a knuckle or two down, it probably needs water. Another question I get often is, how can I grow greens or salad things in the middle of the summer? The funny thing about this is when we think about summer, we often think about salads, but most of your leafy greens, even your spinaches, your kales, your lettuces, none of those are gonna like the heat and the hot weather. So while summer may make you think of salad, most of your salad greens are not gonna wanna grow in the middle of summer. However, you can make some really cool substitutions. I talked earlier in the video about Egyptian spinach. This is one I use, one I love. There are some other options: Malabar spinach, New Zealand spinach, and even sweet potato leaves. So sweet potatoes will thrive in the middle of the summer heat. And when we think about sweet potatoes, we think about the tuber. But what's interesting is their leaves are actually a really good substitution for something like spinach. So you can make some of these swaps to have some fresh leafy greens or some salad material. However, I'm gonna tell you that most of your lettuces are not gonna do well in the middle of the summer. And if you want a true salad, it's probably not gonna happen. You can try to push the envelope a little bit by using shade cloth or by using shade from other plants to try to get some of your lettuces through at least part of the summer. But again, most of the time they're just gonna bolt or they're gonna get bitter. Another question I get often is, oh no, my tomatoes are dropping their flowers like crazy. What can I do? And the answer to this is actually there's not much you can do. So tomatoes in the middle of the heat are going to begin to drop their flowers. They're not gonna set fruit very well. Once temperatures are consistently above like 90 or 95 degrees in the daytime, you're probably not going to get very many tomatoes. And this is just the way that it works. The best thing that you can do is either wait and replant your tomatoes as temperatures start to cool down, or just keep your plants healthy and get them through the hottest part of summer. And as temperatures cool down, that fruit set will begin again. You'll begin to notice that those flowers begin to turn into tomatoes as temperatures begin to cool down. Keep your plants well watered, keep them mulched, and keep them healthy and thriving through the middle of that summer heat. And you're gonna find that they begin producing tomatoes for you as soon as temperatures cool down a little bit. So with a few simple strategies and planting the right varieties, your garden can still thrive in the middle of summer. I thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, for watching this video. Leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know about what you're growing in your summer garden. And don't forget to check out my free garden planting guide. I'm gonna leave it in the description box down below. And I'll also leave some links to a few of my favorite products for you to check out. And once again, these are affiliate links. So I will earn a small commission if you purchase through them, but there's no additional cost to you and it goes a long way in supporting the channel. I only link to things that I use and love in my garden. So check those out if you find them helpful. I'm gonna leave some videos on your screen until the next ones come out. Thank you guys so much for watching. May your garden be full of grace and may you be abundantly blessed. We'll see you next time. Bye.